Okay, well, hello, everybody. Nice to see you here today. This is the regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council. We are going to call this meeting to order. It is Wednesday, April 27, 2022 at 6 p.m. May we please have a roll call?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Hinsey.
Here.
Councilmember Kranz.
Here.
Councilmember Lyons.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Mosca.
Here.
Mayor Blakespear.
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present this evening.
Okay, thank you. And I invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before our oral communications, we have our special presentation today, which is a presentation by the County of San Diego on the Regional Decarbonization Framework. And the presenters are Murtaza Baksa Musa, that must be you, hello, welcome. And then Michael De La Rosa, if he is here as well, he's welcome to speak. So go ahead.
Council members, for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the county. It's an honor to be here. I work for the Land Use and Environment Group Executive Office at the county, and we want to present a collaborative approach to a regional decarbonization framework. I want to emphasize the word collaborative because that is the heart of what our project is. It's important to know that the framework is in its development phase. We have worked with UC San Diego to scientifically identify the best sectors to focus on and USD to assess the region's current efforts on what is missing to reach our goal. And we've engaged in independent contractors to study what impacts the decarbonization framework would have on any future changes to the area's workforce. We have widely engaged the community and stakeholder groups. We are here today because we want your city to be part of this effort. We know Encinitas has been a leader in sustainability efforts, and this is an important part of our program to have you on board. Sorry, next. Okay. Recognizing the need for a regional approach to addressing climate change, in January last year, our Board of Supervisors voted to create a regional decarbonization framework. This framework is intended to provide science-based pathways to inform policymaking in regional, county, and city governments towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the San Diego region. It is separate from but complements ongoing climate action planning efforts by local governments. We want to begin with 3 guiding principles that drove this project from the start. The first principle was to use a data-driven approach so that we can all objectively gauge where we are and where we want to be. Our second principle is that our vision would be guided by input from the public, including business groups, labor unions, environmental advocates, Native American tribes, and communities across the region. We're going to be using a broad range of both traditional as well as virtual tools for community engagement. Finally, our third principle is that we are all in this together. We want to identify the additional role the county can play in both supporting and convening public agencies, cities and regional authorities, and tribal governments, and in collaborating to attract state and federal resources for climate mitigation, adaptation, as well as resilience. Now, based on these three principles of data outreach and collaboration, we derived the components of what we call an integrated regional decarbonization framework. Here are the 3 components. The first was a technical report, a draft of it, which is out, and comments are due until the end of May. Second, a workforce development study by inclusive economics to ensure that our local workers benefit from climate investments. And third, implementation pathways. While there will be many studies, discussions, and recommendations throughout this process, actual decarbonization results will come from implementation of programs, policies, and projects by all of us working together. Here's a brief timeline. We began the modeling work last summer. We have a draft report out in October. We now have a second draft report, and we will be finalizing the draft and completing all the analysis in July. We intend to present the integrated regional decarbonization framework with all of these three components I described to the board for final approval. Before going to the board, we will be holding public outreach events organized by different categories to engage every member of the community. Here is an example, a new engagement tool that we launched where the public can engage with each other, ask comments, and to the county, as well as to experts behind the scene. Here's the team that worked on the technical framework itself. It was led by University of California, San Diego Global School of Policy and Strategy, and we worked in collaboration with the Energy Policy Initiative Center at the University of San Diego. And there are different technical experts in fields across the country. The 4 pathways that were analyzed, these are the big buckets, are transportation, buildings, electricity, and land use. The technical reports analysis are based on proven technologies and on emerging best practices from across the nation. These were our baseline analysis. Here are key findings. First, the geospatial analysis of energy siting shows that the region has sufficient available land area for utility-scale wind and solar generation to approach a fully decarbonized energy system. However, there will be trade-offs associated with energy that is large-scale in terms of its generation. Second, the transportation analysis shows that projected annual emissions through mid-century under current transportation emission reduction strategies are inconsistent with the levels of reduction required under the governor's executive orders, and that there are opportunities to further reduce these emissions. Third, the buildings analysis focused on building electrification and shows that replacing end-of-life fossil fuel heating systems with electrified systems is a near-term priority because some heating systems will only turn over once through mid-century. And fourth, the land use and natural climate solutions analysis shows that the San Diego region can effectively and inexpensively sequester and store carbon dioxide through protecting natural and working lands and avoiding land use change. Now let's take a look at the local policy analysis by EPIC, which was part of the technical report. This is the most comprehensive overview of climate action plans in the region. It is the first study of its kind that quantified the magnitude of the challenge in achieving meaningful reductions in regional greenhouse gas emissions. It was not intended to evaluate, score, or rank any particular cap. It is important to emphasize that the analysis assumes that each jurisdiction will act within their own authority to accomplish their goals. Based on EPIC's analysis, they found these are the 4 high-level takeaways. First, the current regional cap commitments do not put us on a path to reach net zero goals by mid-century. This is not a statement about any individual cap, but is rather a regional view of all caps combined. EPIC assumed that all caps can demonstrate that they will reach the individual targets, and each city will implement what their commitments are. Second, local jurisdictions do have legal authority to do more than they are currently doing. So authority to act is not a barrier in many cases. Third, the good news is that there are numerous opportunities for local jurisdictions to do more to reduce GHG emissions, and there are many examples of policies from across the region and in California. And fourth, EPIC identified numerous opportunities where regional collaboration can help to facilitate local action. Some examples of these are regional data collection on social equity, geospatial analysis to identify best locations to plant trees, regional support for policy development, for example, in building decarbonization, and financial incentive programs, for example, in EVs. The technical report does not comment on the structure of the regional collaboration or which stakeholders should participate. Rather, the report highlights the areas where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. We released the draft of the workforce study last month. It is called Putting San Diego County on the High Road: Climate Workforce Recommendations for 2030 and 2050. It is authored by Dr. Carol Zabin from UC Berkeley and Inclusive Economics, and it is modeled after the statewide study that was done on a similar path for the State Climate and Jobs Action Plan. It's just definitions for what high road jobs are. It was basically a crosswalk between the different recommendations in the different sectors versus what it is that we want to achieve in 2030 and beyond in terms of both protecting good quality jobs that are in San Diego region as well as creating opportunities for jobs of the future. On a closing note, regional collaboration is essential for the development of implementation pathways. Therefore, the county will convene local and regional jurisdictions, agencies, and stakeholders to build coalitions that work together to solve problems that none of us can solve on our own. For example, in transportation, a regional authority to support EV infrastructure and look at EV charging needs region-wide. In buildings, a regional program to provide technical assistance and policy development support. In electricity, existing regional community choice aggregation or other partnerships. In land use and natural climate solutions, a regional analysis to identify blue and green carbon opportunities. And common to all of this is social equity, which can benefit from regional guidance on an equity element in climate action plans, regional equity indicators, as well as a regional climate equity report. We now know what needs to be done collectively, and because we collaborate well in this region, our greener future is bright. That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer your questions. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for working on this at the county level. It's great to see.
Thank you.
Do we have any public speakers on this? Okay. Deputy Mayor Mosca.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Baksamusa. Thank you so much for being here. It makes me proud, your presentation makes me proud of the County of San Diego. Finally, we are witnessing leadership from the County of San Diego. This is just really great. Instead of being passive, they are being extraordinarily active. And so I applaud the county for this type of leadership. I think whatever kind of collaboration that's going to kind of take shape in the future, I'm not sure. You had kind of indicated that you wanted us to kind of agree to something, but I'm not sure that I heard anything that you want us to do. And a lot of the stuff we're already doing. So, but would love to have a collaboration with the county, be in collaboration. So, but some sort of flexibility within that collaboration, and something where we're active with the county and trying to kind of reach those goals for the future. I think one of the things that are of particular importance to me is the energy sector. As a board member for the Community Choice Energy Program, you talk about utility scale and the reports that you guys have done and the information that has come to light in terms of just being able to meet the goals in basin within the county with the utility scale. I think that it's gonna take all of us working together. Especially as one of the biggest problems for utility scale projects is going to be siting. And where do we cite that? And you've had a couple of projects come before the Board of Supervisors, and I'd note that sometimes the connecting of the dots on siting and the necessity for these projects locally hasn't always seemed like that's been the highest priority. I think community benefits is important, but so is citing utility scale projects locally. This city council wants local generation, distributive generation. We can certainly move the dial on more rooftop solar, but local generation is going to be important. The alternative to that is as we're buying into more projects in Imperial Valley, where a lot of those transmission lines are congested, in the future we'd have to build new lines, which would cost billions of dollars, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants to run big transmission lines through those deserts, and so working together and having a collaborative approach where we can all talk about siting generation locally and community benefits and also even energy storage. I'll note that there's a lot of, including this city, that doesn't permit by right energy storage, and so there's going to be a lot of hurdles just to try to get energy storage deployed in some of these areas. So anyways, thank you so much. Thank you for what the county's doing, and we stand ready to collaborate and work with the county to make sure that we're reaching those goals of less carbon dioxide in the air and greenhouse gases being reduced. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kranz.
Yes, thank you. And I believe it's Dr. Baxamusa. Yes. I appreciate the presentation. I also follow you on Twitter and enjoy that. I would like to also point out that while the county may not have been scoring caps, the Climate Action Campaign does, and our cap scored very well, which is something I'm quite proud of. But to the point that you made, which is that the other 17 jurisdictions in the county, you know, we need their cooperation to really achieve the goals that we're, you know, the county has set. So I hope that there will be that continued effort, and I appreciate the fact that the county is involved in it. I would point out that, you know, while we have a very, I think, aggressive cap, the key to meeting the goals is, you know, certain programs that we have need some resources. So anything that the county could do to bring resources to some of the challenges that we have. We explored net zero buildings, solar, would like to do storage, as Deputy Mayor Mosca mentioned. So it sure would be nice if the county stepped up with some resources to make that more of a viable option. So again, I appreciate the focus on it. Like my colleagues, having the county involved is just very refreshing to see. So thank you.
Thank you again for coming tonight. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate
Okay, so now we're on to oral communications.
Mr. Mayor, we do have 6. I'll call each speaker, call you 3 at a time, and reminder that you do have 3 minutes. First is Terry Ann Skelly, followed by Mark Wilcox, and then Scott Campbell.
Dirty glasses. Good evening, City Council. As a parent of young adult sons, I've followed Measure H in our city and the unfolding of marijuana business application procedures and accompanying fees. During the months of March and April, several speakers addressed the need for taxes on marijuana sales. I thought from the City Council's discussion and Coast News and Encinitas Advocate articles that the City Council was going to bring a marijuana tax proposal forward this month. Perhaps the changeover in city attorneys has made the delay. Those few cities in the counties with marijuana businesses that have adopted taxes, especially for the marijuana retail businesses, the taxes often go into the general fund and are designated for a couple different things. One, prevention messages for young people under 25, often for law enforcement, decoy operations, and for annual city code enforcement checks on correct labeling and marijuana products. Annual law enforcement, minor decoy operations, and city code enforcement checks on the correct labeling of marijuana products could be very important since the State Department of Cannabis Control, the DCC, does no enforcement at all. The DCC made it clear in a recent webinar for parents, teachers, and others who work with youth that they have absolutely no resources to do that because the positions within the department haven't been filled. I respectfully suggest that the City Council bring a discussion regarding a marijuana business tax for the November ballot for a future agenda item. I know it would be very welcome to parents, to educators, and others who work on behalf of youth. It is a beginning in recognizing that there are real costs of marijuana consumption to young adults, families, neighborhoods, and society in general. The costs are extremely high in mental health costs alone, which is becoming more clear with each new study. Parents in the city could describe to you in heartbreaking detail the role of marijuana use in exacerbating their children's anxiety and depression. Thank you for your consideration and this opportunity to speak to you on such a significant subject.
Thank you. The date is actually already set. It was in the WAVE report. Would you like to share what the date is? Do you know?
May 11th.
Okay, so that's when we'll be discussing taxation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Wilcox. Mark will be followed by Scott Campbell, and then Geraldine Kessler.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Mark Wilcox. I'm a father and grandfather. I'm passionate about protecting young people from drug use that short-circuits their journey to adulthood faster than any other problem. On behalf of our parent community, I am hoping the marijuana tax is still coming to City Council, perhaps in May. Looks like May 11, if I heard that correctly. The Coast News article of March 25 seemed to ensure that the City Council is planning on it when it wrote, quote, "By a 5-0 vote at a meeting on March 16, the Council voted to approve an amendment to its agreement with HDL Company, a cannabis compliance organization hired by the city last year to assist in the development and review of the cannabis business registration and application process, and the creation of a marijuana sales tax on marijuana," end quote. Many of us are concerned about the city's capacity to deal with the damages or injuries to Encinitas citizens or property through marijuana consumption, cultivation, and manufacturing. So, a marijuana tax could be used to assist the city. 5 months ago, the Coast News described the product Procure D, a gas deodorizer, which was used on an Encinitas marijuana grow site whose fumes and smells sickened its surrounding neighbors. Procure D is not an EPA-registered product. Cultivaris Hemp, the company operating the Encinitas marijuana grow site, was found to be using the product in violation of state pesticide codes. What was glaring was the inability of the city to provide any administrative or enforcement relief to the affected citizens. I was not reassured when both the consultant HDL and the city stated in the city's consultant agreement that they won't hold each other liable for legal action arising directly or indirectly from the consumption or use of marijuana and/or marijuana-containing products, and liability for damages or injuries to a third person's or property. We look forward to the citizens' protection that the marijuana tax may be able to provide. Thank you, and that is May 11. I heard that right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, look, me and everybody here has a vested interest in your success. We really want you to succeed. We win if you win. I'm a resident of Encinitas and a property owner in Encinitas. I urge the City Council to place a moratorium on large housing units until the water drought emergency is over. And the precedent has been set with pandemic response, and water is actually probably more valuable than that was. The Metropolitan Water District this week instituted mandatory water rationing. I'm sure that's going to come down here. With the state mandated more units and also mandated less water, if you do the math, it's a pretty tough situation per resident, per person, per property. I did the math. It's a voluntary cuts of 15%, mandatory housing of 10%. That works out to 77% less per person that's already here in Encinitas. That's kind of lame. Last week, the state senate voted to lower the water standard per person with more and more, up to 25%, I believe, in 2 or 3 years from now. If we don't have water, how can we have housing? You can use this as leverage, as a way to stop all this housing that you've on record as saying you want local control. Here's an opportunity. It's a win situation. The Coastal Commission just rejected a desalinization plant in Dana Point. Less water. Well, I don't know why they did that. I didn't get into it. Water is not like housing. It's limited in supply. We can make more housing. We don't. Some people want it, some people don't, but we can make it. We can't really make more water. And if we get it, we don't have it. Encinitas has limited to no storage of water. Okay, we have our water districts and all that, but Encinitas as a city doesn't have its own stuff. Once again, where's the water for these additional houses going to come from? I do see that there was some progress in the front yard out here. I don't know exactly what was done, but there was some. And once again, this is a vested interest and success for everybody here. Thank you.
Next speaker is Geraldine Kessler, followed by Trina Priest, and then Tim Bratton.
I would like to speak about the environmental nightmare housing project on Melba Road that is slated to take down a grove of mature Torrey pines, 173 trees, 30 smaller trees and native shrubs, along with demoing not one but 3 beautiful historical homes built in 1938, all based on the ill-fated density bonus law, AB 2345. I would like to remind the council that Torrey Pacific and Brian Staver are refusing to sign off on the 2 cypress historical boundary trees as heritage trees, which we feel were possibly planted by Anton Amherst. He was the original owner of the Botanical Gardens and a founding member of the Water District, and he also owned the Staver property. Brian is also objecting to the row of mature Torrey pines on Melba Road, which are city-owned trees designated as heritage trees. I don't think he has any say in the city-owned trees, but nevertheless, it demonstrates how out of touch he is with the Encinitas Climate Action Plan or working with the neighborhood. It's very disturbing to our community. Today, I just want to point out again the fact that people need to feel safe in their homes, especially during this 2-year-old pandemic. Long-time senior tax-paying residents are not feeling safe when they simply want to age in place in their homes, but due to the impact of the Staver Environmental Nightmare Housing Project, they are put on pause and not allowed to. More people in the neighborhood are seeking medical care due to the stress it's causing them on their lives, worrying about the tree removal along with the drainage and the hydrology of this project are very upsetting to the community. This housing project is set to become Goodson 2.0. Please don't put the community through that again. The drainage and the runoff of the projects is headed right down Ocean Knoll Canyon. Ocean Knoll Canyon recently received a grant for habitat restoration. Just another disconnect this project has on the entire community. After 3 submissions, Torrey Pacific has shown no real plan to the city on how they are dealing with the hydrology and the runoff of this environmental nightmare housing project. The biology report is not accurate. We all know the wildlife, and we see and hear it all through the neighborhood. It's more than lizards, as the Staver biology report states. Demoing those 2 beautiful historical homes is heartbreaking for the neighborhood. I spoke with an architectural historian who stated that when 2 or more historical buildings are on a property, they can be placed in a category that qualifies them for possible cohesive collection of historical district. Added with the unique character of the tree line, it's representative of the rural look in Encinitas in the 30s, which is not representative in any other place in Encinitas. I've spoken to 3 of the local Native American tribes about the property, and they have stated in their Cogstone report that the area is positive for cultural resources. They also found it very upsetting about the trees not being preserved. This is why I continue to ask to help the community make this beautiful.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Blakespear and City Council members. I am a middle school teacher, has spoken here before regarding what we see with our students' mental health needs. I also have 2 teens at home myself. Parents and educators are on the front lines of these mental health issues. Just last week, the North County Daily Star published an article by a high school colleague of mine. He wrote, quote, "When marijuana comes up in class, I hear teens repeat many misconceptions and mistruths. That marijuana is safe because it's natural, that it's not as dangerous as other drugs, and that it can help with anxiety, depression, and insomnia. These misconceptions aren't just wrong, they're dangerous for our teens." A National Institute of Health study analyzed a survey of over 280,000 young adults aged 18 to 35, showing that marijuana use was associated with an increased risk of suicide, a suicide plan, and a suicide attempt. The study showed that even, quote, even people who used cannabis non-daily, fewer than 300 days a year, were more likely to have suicidal ideations and plan to attempt suicide more than those who did not use the drug at all. In 2020, the San Diego County Medical Examiner reported 39% of completed suicides in ages under 25 tested positive for THC, more than for alcohol, unquote. For the teens in Encinitas, marijuana is the most used substance among their peer group. Smoking and vaping were the most common ways they reported use. It took decades for health officials, regulators, or political leaders to take serious action to prevent youth tobacco use and impose public health protections like advertising restrictions, potency limits, compliance checks to prevent sales to minors, and product restrictions on flavor products that appeal to our youth. Educators and parents are saddened it may take decades before we see serious action to prevent youth marijuana use. Maybe our city can't eradicate the youth problems I mentioned first, but perhaps it could mitigate them by adding a flavored marijuana product to the city's ban on flavored tobacco products. I thank you so much for the attention to this idea.
Tim Breton.
Good evening, Mayor Blakespear and council members. I'm Tim Bratton, and I am wearing red because I am here on behalf of the residents who are supporting the Train Horn Quiet Zone. I have 3 points. Number 1, thank you on behalf of the community of Encinitas Quiet Zone supporters for promising to fund the $750,000 for the design of the citywide quiet zone in the 2022 budget. Our understanding is that there is unanimous support from City Council on the $750,000 and that we don't need to write any more letters or show up here at the meetings because this will be in the May 11th budget. Number 2, Mayor Blakespear, we got the message about construction funding only being available for shovel-ready projects. We realize how difficult it is to get funding in place for a project like this and would like to help so that we can move smoothly from design completion to construction. I understand that design can be completed in as soon as 12 months, and hopefully, when the quiet zone is shovel-ready, we can move forward with construction without delay. We want to help with that. Number 3, as you probably know, there are about 1,000 of us so far have put their names on the petition, joined the Google group, or have joined us on the Facebook or Nextdoor groups. Since we believe that the funds are going to be in the May 11 budget, there is no need for all of us to show up here at the meeting. But I encourage you to visualize the entire room filled with hopeful citizens, all wearing red shirts, who are looking forward to the day when we no longer have to suffer from sleepless nights and constant interruptions from the train horns. Thank you.
Mayor, that does conclude speakers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the speakers today. So next we have, we did not have closed session, so we don't have a report. That's right, City Attorney. And do we have any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the posted agenda. And then moving to the consent calendar, item 8E has been pulled by Councilmember Kranz.
Okay, I entertain a motion on the balance.
I'll move the balance or the remainder of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, Councilmember Kranz, would you like to say
Yes.
some comments?
I don't need a staff report. I want to say I appreciate this getting to the council quickly. And I would make a motion that we adopt the recommended actions 1 and 2, but I would add a third item, which is to convene an ad hoc subcommittee of myself and Councilmember Lyons for the purpose of working with staff and the architect to get things kicked off and, you know, have an engagement there that, you know, we can bring a little bit of the history to the conversation and kind of make sure that things are heading in the right direction.
And I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, I just want to ask about the motion. So, or maybe Jennifer could address the way it would work. Just my concern is to make sure that we maintain on a timeline that gets this, that doesn't create any additional delay. But I think with other large projects in the city, we have had some council member involvement as things move forward. So I'm understanding that that's what Councilmember Kranz is asking for. So could you respond to that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of council. Yes, we have had subcommittees before. I think at the last council meeting, I made it clear that we do have a very tight timeline and schedule. So as long as Councilmember Krantz and Councilmember Lyons are up to moving quickly and making sure that we can have time to meet and review things and go quickly, I don't see an issue with that. But we just want to make sure we do have a tight timeline and want to stay on top of that.
Okay, so is there a way that if for some reason it's resulting in delays that are meaningful, that we could get it back to council and reconsider what's happening? Because other ways we've done it are we've had updates at the end of council meetings, like once a month on projects, so that the whole council could be involved. I mean, I'm happy to support this of my colleagues, but I just really want to make sure that we have off-ramps to get back on course if we end up getting delayed. Because I do have the perception that Leucadia Streetscape got somewhat bogged down in part with a lot of discussion back and forth with the subcommittee that was created and the different ideas of where it could go and all that. And it took some pulling it back in, but I am very concerned about that not happening here.
And Mayor, members of council, I think as long as we can lay out our goals and objectives, agree on the timeline, and as long as everyone makes themselves available, I think we can move that quickly. One other thought was, as this is a project that council is very interested in, we can also have informational items at council meetings as this progresses, but we do want to finish the design in August, bid out in September, and award in October.
Okay, good. So I'm happy to support that as long as the council, those two council members can keep to that timeline.
Oh, we're
Yeah.
certainly as interested, if not more interested, in moving this along, so.
Okay, good.
And I'd just like to complement that by saying, really my primary objective is to make sure it moves forward without having to go back and redo work. We need to just stay in the loop in order to keep it moving forward.
Right, and I agree with you that it is true that if it goes too far along and then council gets it and says, hey, well, this is a problem, then we would redo work, and that's not good. Okay. So
That's our objective, yes.
Okay. I don't see anyone else who wants to speak, so let's go ahead and vote on it.
Motion carries unanimously. That completes the consent calendar.
Okay, great. So now we have item 10A, which is a public hearing to consider and adopt Resolution 2022-37, which is related to the annual action plan for the Community Development Block Grant. Now, I know we've already had this as a staff report, so we don't need a full staff report. Maybe just highlight the changes from the last time we heard it. Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, City Council, and members of the public. So this item, as you mentioned, was heard by the council in March of 2022. At that meeting, the City Council approved a general fund subsidy for the Public Service Agency's request for funding, which was not able to be fully actualized with the available CDBG funds. That additional general fund subsidy was included in the action plan, which was made available for the 30-day public review period. We have not received any comments, and that concludes staff's presentation.
And can you just remind me of what was the additional general fund amount that we were adding to make the programs complete?
Right, so it's anticipated that it would be $4,625 based on what we anticipate our grant being for the fiscal year. We still do not know what the actual grant is going to be. We haven't received our final allocation, so that $4,625 could be less or more based on what we actually receive.
Okay. Okay, I'll go ahead and move approval on this. I know this was, my request was that we fully fund those things. I thought it was more than 4,000, but maybe it's been, that was the amount before too?
It's about $1,500 per public service recipient, so
okay.
there's three, yeah.
Okay, okay, great.
I'll second.
Second, already second.
Oh, you did.
But I'll withdraw if you want it.
That's fine. Yes, we want that.
Deputy Mayor? There you go. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. Now we're on to item 10B, which is City Council discussion regarding the COVID-19 pandemic executive order related to temporary outdoor street dining. So we'll hand this over to Planning Manager Kalamusi. And how many public speakers do we have? Two? Okay.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and members of the public. Here we go. So at the December 15th, 2021 City Council hearing, I provided some background regarding the status of the COVID-19 state executive order. The latest order was issued on November 10th of 2021, and that extended the outdoor dining and the alcohol service reliefs until March of 2022. And then, as you may recall, we, as a city, approved Resolution 2020-40, which stated that those ease of regulations would go until 3 months after, which brings us to June of 2022. We also discussed Assembly Bill 61. That went into effect on January 2022, and that bill extended the ability of local agencies to provide continued regulatory relief as determined necessary by each jurisdiction, and that goes until January 1st, 2024. This just summarizes the results from that last council hearing, which are listed here, extending the waiver requirements for private property and for sidewalks, and then to remove the on-street dining, as well as update the sidewalk cafe policy, which occurred on March 16th, 2022, to allow alcohol for those requesting the permanent sidewalk dining, and then to initiate code specific plan and LCPA amendments, which was also initiated March of 2022. Since that hearing, staff has created they created a flyer with all the information that was received and identifying the next steps for those who have dining within the street, and the outreach included sending the flyer by mail, as well as individual site visits to all of those businesses, speaking with owners and managers. In a recent interpretation, as outlined in the staff report by Coastal Commission, it specifically regarded the applicability of AB 61. And in that interpretation, it did speak to the on-street dining areas were included as one of those areas under the umbrella of AB 61. I put the AB 61 language specifically on this slide if you need me to refer back to it and reference it. Given that interpretation from Coastal Commission, staff is recommending that the temporary on-street dining area be extended to the January 1st, 2024 deadline, which is consistent with the timeline prescribed in AB 61. And we are also looking for direction on if that were to occur, if the council would also support that, would the city accept new applications for additional outdoor dining areas in the streets? And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Let's hear the public speakers, and then we'll go to the council.
Okay, we do have two, Chris Buchanan, followed by Scott Campbell, and then John Giada is registering support for extending but does not wish to speak.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for the presentation and for considering this issue. I just wanted to show up with, I figured there'd be some other restaurateurs here, but they're probably working, actually. I thought you just should know a few things, how I kind of look at it. I was also the president of E101, as many of you know. And I feel like the outdoor dining, what that has done for our Main Street, has activated it. And I started to think about, wow, as soon as those lights are gone that are on all of the extra seating, it's going to go back to being really dark. We've been trying at E101 to get more lighting, just through the little budget that we have every year, and we've been adding more and more, so we have some more ideas coming up. But I feel like restaurants got all the love during COVID, and I would love for our city downtown to be more activated. People come down, have dinner, go to JoJo's, get an ice cream, go into a retail shop, buy something, and it's just part of what a main street should be. So I'm really glad that you guys are considering this. Restaurants are like, owning a restaurant, it's like living paycheck to paycheck. You know, just when you get ahead, $7,000 water heater goes down, $12,000 espresso machine goes down. We have hired 300 people since March of 2020. 300, that's our turnover. They come in, they go, they move home. This already a transient industry. You know, a kid comes for 6 months to get experience and goes somewhere else. So that's already our normal life. 300 since 2020. About 8 hours a person. I did the math, it almost made me throw up. So it's so much money that this is really gonna help. Tables are money, it's a bottom line. And so if we can keep them for as long as we can, it's gonna help us catch up. But also think it will just keep our downtown activated and alive. So thank you for considering this. And if we could be creative on the sidewalks, you know, when these eventually do go away, if they do, really helping us through that process and making it easy, because it literally just takes someone coming down and looking and measuring and then just getting it done. We don't have time to deal with all the crazy paperwork. It took me quite a while to get one table permitted that actually the city had asked us to put there because people were falling into the handicap spot during streetscape. But it took me like months, you know? And we don't want to operate illegally and just have that stress. So we need help sort of building out the downtown and just making it amazing. I know we all want it. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. And
Thank you, Chris, for coming to speak on behalf of the restaurants. And
if you have any
taking
questions
time.
that you are wondering about, I'm happy to answer them from a restaurant's perspective. I mean, we all do feel like we spent a lot of money and invested in it, but they could be better and safer. We did have a girl crash into ours, and she hit the orange barrier and kind of got in between a barrier, and it fell over, and we got there in the morning. She wasn't drinking and driving and just had started from J Street up, so she wasn't going very fast, but actually knocked our railing over, and then we just luckily put it back up and hammered it in. But if someone was sitting in a bar stool there, could have been a serious incident. But it happened at like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. So I think the deputy mayor has a question.
No question. I just wanted to, since you're here, I always want to go into your store and just say thank you. I mean, your place, your restaurant really exemplifies what can happen in our downtown. I mean, everything you've talked about in terms of activating, creative. I mean, it's all you. It's your business is that poster child for that for creating a vibrant downtown. And so thank you. And as we move forward in the future and we're thinking about a policy for outside dining, I hope you'll help us kind of think about how we can, allow you to do what you do best and create a policy that makes sense for our downtown. So thank you for everything you've done, because that whole area down there looks so much more vibrant in the last few years, and it's because of what you've done. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you for saying that. And I mean, everyone sort of just kept going, oh, wow, and then built up, and they got better and better. So it can be great. And we've heard from every customer, I really don't think people are ready to go and be crammed back inside. It was kind of terrifying to think, how are we going to do this summer with everybody inside again? And so this is exciting that we'll be able to get through the summer, hopefully. But just work towards, I mean, if you need restaurant owners, if you need anybody to get on a committee or anything to work towards something that makes sense, to make something a little bit more permanent. I know we could get E101 and all the 101s involved and make our Main Street more than parking and a highway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. The other council members all have comments, but I want to hear the other public comments first, if that's okay.
Scott Campbell?
Before time starts, can I ask what restaurant?
Oh, sorry, from Good On You.
It's called Good On Ya, and it's in downtown.
Good on you. Okay. Okay, so under the local emergency order designed to mitigate COVID-19 pandemic restrictions on indoor dining and talked about underutilized parking. That was the basis of all this stuff. And now we're talking about revenue, nice revenue. I mean, the restaurants did struggle, and the city is talking about revenue. Sales tax is 18%. But, this is a win. I want everybody to win on this. In 2017, we went through a huge issue with all this stuff in bars downtown. Here's a quote from the Encinitas advocate. Loud and overcrowded bars. The area lacks other services because it has so many restaurants and bars. I could go on. There was an article in the Baltimore Sun, a couple articles about that. And now here we are making more opportunities for people to drink. I like to drink. I love to drink. I'll admit it right here on the camera. I love to drink. So it seems contradictory to me that we're doing both on the same end. If we're going to do this, we need to do this right. This is a temporary permit that's going to expire. It's still, it gives you a lot of time, a year and a half, which means basically that the mitigation will be going on for a lot longer time than the pandemic emergency. So if we're going to do this right, let's take away the parking and put it all sidewalks. If we want to be like Santa Barbara or some of these other cities that we really want to be like, let's go all in, put some big trees and get rid of all the cars. Let's make it be a one-way street. Northbound on Coast Highway, southbound on 2nd Street. The bicycles would be now separated and have room. I did a little poll. I went to an event Monday. People are terrified on Coast Highway, drivers and pedestrians and bicycle riders, because it's just, everything's too tight. Okay, let's move on. Recent thing, design standards in the Planning Commission. We need some design standards for these outdoor dining facilities. They're all over the place. From a public safety perspective, what's their intended lifespan? Are they intended to last more than till next January? Preservation of character. Maybe they should start looking like real downtown Encinitas or downtown Acadia, or maybe New Encinitas should get in on this too. Commissioner Apuzzo mentioned this back in 2017, that New Encinitas really could use some late night additions. The side effects, there are losses to other businesses that do require daytime parking that the restaurants aren't using, and we need to find a solution for that. And it's flat out dangerous. Cars trying to park and drive, we're all against cars, but the reality is people have cars. So anyways, I'm officially neutral on this. And I just hope it works out for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public speakers?
We do not. That concludes public speakers.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lyons.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to just kick off by saying, I represent District 3, and I work very closely with Cardiff 101 Business Association. And their membership, it's been reported to me that their membership has always really been in support of continuing the use of the parking. So I want to come out and say that right up front. In Cardiff, though, all of the use of the parking is on privately owned property. So it's a little bit unique in that regard. If you can just kind of picture Cais and Las Alas, and Bestawan. These are all on private property. So it's a little bit different situation. And there's also some defined parking spaces according to the Coastal Commission in Cardiff. So they don't really, they have not reported that there are concerns about continuing this program, and they would be really in favor of continuing it. So I did want to start by saying that. I do want to say that I'm in favor of us accepting new applications, but I do want to get a clarification. I'm imagining that we've been accepting applications throughout this first period, so it wouldn't be a change in how we're doing it, correct? Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I would be interested if there's anything new to report on safety. If there's any safety concerns, that would be something to consider. And it may be specific to any one place. I'm not sure. If there is something there, I'd be interested in hearing it. I would also be interested in, the only time I've ever heard something negative is we did get a comment today of a concern as a part of this agenda item, and it came to us through the public comment. And so if there are businesses that do have a concern, I would encourage us as a city to work with those businesses and see if we can help them resolve their concern. And perhaps we've done that already, but if we haven't, I think that's the right way forward to help them with their issue. And I do know, and I just conclude with, we do have a parking study that's ongoing. I have been told that our parking study will include the concept of shared parking wherever we can, to where there's lots that might not be used at certain times of days. They could be used by other people at other times of days. So I hope that parking study continues to move forward, which will help us really know, we want to be data-driven, help us really know where's our parking, is it in the right places, do we have enough? And I know we don't have that study done yet, but I think that will really inform us as we move forward. And I'm really in favor of moving forward with this recommended action.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you. So I feel very similarly to Councilmember Lyons. I am supportive of continuing to allow the encroachments to take place and to not have to have the businesses disassemble them only to put them back up once we have a refined policy about keeping them permanent. I too was able to speak with the Main Street Director for downtown Encinitas today, and I think what she is attempting to represent in the comments that we received is that to have a vibrant Main Street, it really takes a mix of different types of businesses that we have down there. So I want to continue to support the restaurants, but also acknowledge that there are impacts to the services downtown and to the retail businesses downtown. And I hope that we can be really receptive to what they are telling us would be helpful for their businesses. So whether that's focus groups to make sure that we have a representative of each type of business that we have downtown, to make sure that we're hearing all of those different ideas. I hope that we can recruit those ideas. Councilmember Lyons and I attempted to pilot a buy local strategy when it was, I think we were still mid-pandemic, 2021, and really, like Chris mentioned, it was hard to get people to show up and support that because I think there was just so much going on. But I do think that we should consider ways to do that, because even though the pandemic, it seems to be winding down in some ways, we are still facing a labor shortage. We are still facing months of lost revenue to our businesses, and we should do everything we can to still be in recovery mode. So that's sort of the short-term recommendations. And then the long-term, it is public property that restaurants are able to use in the case of the on-street parking. And I do think that there is a cost that should be given back somehow to the public. So I know that we're considering some form of either rent to those businesses that provides a strategy for the city to mitigate that loss of public parking, be it a shuttle service or a different location somewhere in downtown that we can offer as employee parking, and then maybe do a micro-mobility solution at that employee parking location. But that as we are envisioning the long term, we should be thinking about how we can use that specific money to support the impacts to the public. So I am curious to know, are we still receiving a lot of interest from new businesses that want to be applying for encroachment permits?
It's not very large, no. Maybe one every once in a while.
Okay. I am supportive of continuing to allow businesses to apply, but I think that because we're not in the emergency state anymore, we can refine some of the things that we're asking for. I know we tweaked it a little bit down the line so that we had the ADA compliance and some more clear guidelines. But at this point, I feel that if new businesses want to be encroaching in the public right away, they should be really quality dining areas that they're building. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Krantz.
But in fact, we are in a state of emergency. We still have our declared emergency, in part because of the resolutions that we adopted for these encroachments. And so with that, I'd like to ask the city manager, is there a way when we, if it's decided by the council that we're going to take advantage of AB 61, how can we unwind our resolutions in a way that allows us to terminate the emergency declaration?
So we'll be conferring with the city attorney on, right now the resolution for outdoor dining expires 90 days after the governor's order, which was March 31st. So it would automatically transpire. I believe with AB 61, you can just allow that to expire and utilize AB 61. Or we could bring something forward That order was adopted prior to me being here, and I'm not sure if it's attached to anything else. I don't think it is, but it's one of the things we're looking into.
So how long do you think it will be before we can undeclare an emergency?
We're hoping by the next meeting, we can bring something forward, because if AB 61 takes care of the outdoor dining, that was kind of the last hanging chad.
Yeah, that'd be great, because it feels kind of funny being in a declared state of emergency in our city when the governor has revoked his declaration. So
The reason why I believe that the staff did that is it was always intended that we would give the restaurants time to unwind, so that the day that the governor's order ended. So
it all
that's the only
makes
reason
sense,
why.
but
Yeah.
you know, the goal for me is to get it to a state where we can separate the two issues. So I look forward to that. And I also want to thank Chris and all the businesses in our community that have worked through the pandemic, and I know we lost some, but for the most part, I think we did pretty well in our city. So, and that's in no small part due to the hard work and the reference you made to the paycheck to paycheck, the struggles of making payroll and finding enough people to work. We did receive some feedback from the E101, and it was from, I believe, a boutique owner. And so one of the things that I hope we can establish in the studies that we're doing going forward is, you know, maybe we can gather some empirical evidence as to the impacts that non-restaurants feel from the loss of parking. So I don't know how that gets done, but it would be great to do that. I'm assuming that the boutiques that are in the vicinity of Gudanya are probably seeing more business because of the number of people that I see at the restaurant. So, but that's just an assumption. It's anecdotal. It would be great to be able to establish that. So that's my hope out of the work that we're doing going forward, the studies, the parking studies, et cetera, that we can establish empirically whether encroachments, this loss of parking is having a detrimental effect on non-restaurant businesses. So, but I do definitely support this. I support anything that creates space for people and not cars. And to Scott's point, addressing issues related to the traffic flows on Highway 101, the lack of left turn pockets at D and E streets are a disaster. They cause traffic chaos constantly on weekends when traffic is busy. I'm not sure what the solution there is, but I think that a proposal to move southbound traffic on 2nd Street would probably be met with some resistance. But in the end, we do need to work to get creative. We are encouraging people to make choices that involve 2 wheels instead of 4. I know that my preference is to ride my bike in large part because I don't have to worry about parking. And so I would hope that as we continue with this, these encroachments for the restaurateurs, that we would continue also to provide the ability for people to make a choice to come by bike or by foot or by skateboard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, so I support the this adoption of this policy to allow for outside dining, and that we would, in the interim between, as this AB 61 is in place, that we're kind of putting together a policy for outside dining in the future, and that we're looking to some of our E101s and L101s and C101s and our business owners to kind of help us craft a policy that makes sense in the downtown. You know, I think that still, you know, the fact is that a lot of these measures went into place because we wanted to help small businesses. We wanted to help some of the restaurants in the downtown get to that pre-COVID capacity, that with the distance requirements and people frankly feeling not comfortable, you know, sitting next to each other as they were pre-COVID, that a lot of the restaurants were losing business. And so while we don't have those restrictions in place, and while we don't see what we saw a year ago, there are still cases being reported. We're not completely out of it. And I would note that there are still people that feel very much uncomfortable going to restaurants and resuming the normal kind of seating patterns. And that I think that having AB 61 and allowing for kind of that pre-COVID capacity, allowing for outside spaces to be used in this fashion are a good idea, because I think that it allows businesses to capture that business that they did have previously. And so I think for that reason, I do think this kind of analysis of pre-COVID capacity is still a very relevant analysis. In addition to what was already said, I think that kind of making a more permanent policy in the future of what makes sense for outside dining, balancing all of the interest of wanting to have parking in our downtown, but also wanting to kind of use some of these stalls for more than just kind of parking a car, because I think what we've seen is really hard to put back into the bottle, which is that really it creates a lot of creativity, a lot of vibrancy, a lot of opportunities for neighbors to kind of see each other in the downtown and throughout our city. And there are places in New Encinitas now. We do have Brewer's Tap Room, if you enjoy drinking, as you said you did. Brewer's Tap Room is a place that has outside dining as well. And we have a new ramen place that serves beer as well. And so there's plenty of opportunities in New Encinitas, and it's becoming very vibrant. And so I think that I'm in favor of this staying in place and also a more permanent policy in the future. And I think that the new applicants should be able to, I can't imagine that there are too many more new applicants, but to the extent that there are, I do favor allowing new applicants to also allow them to have outside opportunities. In terms of the standards, I want to make sure that this has already been said, but there are standards, particularly, aesthetics are important to me, but more important is the safety. If we're saying that people can have outside dining, I think that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that it's safe when they're out there. And I won't name names, but I did see one vendor, one business in the downtown that appeared to just simply put tables out there into the stall. And so I think into a parking stall, and I think that's dangerous. And I think that we should have higher standards in terms of what can be put into in the right of way, because we're putting our kind of seal of approval on it, and we are saying that this is safe. And so it ought to be safe as far as we know it should be safe. So I think the safety is really high on my list. Aesthetics is, it's only temporary, but I think, in the future, when we have a policy, I think aesthetics is something that we should be looking at as well. So I will be supporting this policy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's great that we all agree with each other. It sounds like we all want to extend outdoor dining. And I'll just thank the two public speakers who came to speak on this. And I think Chris made some great points about basically wanting to create vitality and energy, and having that outdoor dining with the lighting does create more of a sense of things happening in our downtown, and that's really important. And people go to her restaurant to eat and have a biodynamic wine or a hard kombucha, and then they go get ice cream, and then they go to a shop, and that's exactly what we want to be happening in our downtown and our commercial areas. So I very much support this, and I think that it's important that we find a way to extend it as long as possible. And it sounds like those will be future conversations. But I guess for now, I'll go ahead and make the motion that the recommended action is that we direct staff to extend the temporary outdoor street dining to January 1, 2024, and that we approve new applicants. Was there another question you wanted answered? Okay, that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you.
I'd also like to add one last comment that I forgot to make previously. I would hope that we would focus our code enforcement department on making sure that there's ADA compliance in these areas. I've seen some busy restaurants that I think, lose sight of that issue. And so I hope that we can keep their focus on the need to keep the sidewalks free for those who are mobility impaired. And also maybe some training for those people who are serving customers, because sometimes it gets a little crazy as you're walking and people are cutting across that area. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you for the comments. And the rest of you who are in the room, there are no more items on the agenda. So we have council member reports pursuant to 1, 2, 3, 4. So Councilmember Kranz, do you want to start with that? Any reports?
I have none.
Okay.
I have a little report. So I've been hyping up this presentation at NCTD about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and we did receive that presentation last week, and I was very grateful that Jennifer Campbell was able to listen in, as was our city manager. And it was a really encouraging presentation. Basically, there's almost $200 billion that will go towards transit and multimodal opportunities, which represents a 48% increase over the next 5 years in transit. So it's really transformative. And they do have one, I brought this up because I had a question from Councilmember Lyons. So they do have one part of this bill that's $600 million over the next 5 years that's specifically to eliminate or improve the safety of existing crossings. And the cities are invited to collaborate with NCTD on these applications, but I specifically asked about quiet zones and at-grade crossings, and the response was really positive that the money that is part of this bill would assist a city like Encinitas with projects like that. So that was a great presentation, and I think you can listen to the recording of it. Tim, I know you're interested in the details of that, but you were out of town last week. So it is available online, and then that's all I've got.
Can I ask, so does NCTD, is it a formula grant, meaning like they get the money, or do they have to apply with projects to get the money?
That's a good question. I'll find out. I think it's a mix, actually, and I think Tony listened in on that as well. Do you know if any of that formula question?
I don't think NCT gets formula funding. I think that Sandag does, though. So it would be interesting to hear from Sandag, how they will, allocate that formula funding.
And what bill is this from, the money's coming from?
Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I don't think that Sandag's expectation is that it's formula. I mean, because there's a lot of discussion about getting projects that can be applied for, basically getting them to the point where the application could access the money.
I heard.
You think there's some portion that's formula, but it doesn't go directly to transit agencies? It would go to Sandag?
Yeah, a lot of it will be funneled to cities through Sandag. So when I specifically asked that, they pointed to, I think, 2 or 3 different opportunities for Encinitas that would be from Sandag directly.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's really something that staff needs to follow up on. I mean, making sure that the city is in a position to apply for the projects through Sandag. Because it's not going to come directly to the city. It would go potentially directly to Sandag, and the cities would apply for the projects.
Right. Some of it was through Sandag, and then some of it was through the state of California.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for the update on that. Councilmember Lyons.
The only thing I'll report is the Cultural Arts Committee. The city, it was reported at our Cultural Arts Committee that the city has developed a website for an online calendar for events, art events and culture in the city, and it's kind of still a little bit in a introductory phase where they're working out some things, but pretty soon they'll be reporting that it's fully operational, and it'll be a nice asset for the community and for tourists to go to learn about what's happening in the arts and culture in Encinitas.
So it's currently not operating?
It is. It's kind of like, it's a little bit testing still, but I think they were getting through that phase very quickly.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Mayor?
Nothing.
Okay. And I'll just share as a Sandag update that The largest project that Sandag's working on is the third border crossing at Otay Mesa 2. So that's basically to the east of where you currently think of there being a crossing. There would be a third border crossing. And the sort of hang up or the place where there's focus right now is making sure that it could be staffed. Because without a line item, a budget line item from the federal government for staffing, we're not able to access the financing needed to finish the project. So building a big border crossing involves, the Sandag and the region have built a big, massive road projects that gets to that point. But then, you have to build the actual facility. And then, of course, there are a lot of agreements in place for the Mexican side to build their half. And that is all going along. But the thing that's the snag is the funding, which is not currently in any federal budget. So when I am advocating on behalf of Sandag, we are always leading with the need for that when we're talking to our Congress people and the agency staff, because without that, we won't be able to finish the project. So it seems like it would be crazy to have a border crossing that wouldn't be staffed. So hopefully that will get itself worked out. But apparently all of the border crossings in the country are very understaffed. So the idea that we would move from staff from a different border crossing or having our own line item has been difficult to get across the finish line. So just wanted to update you on one of the things happening at Sandag. Okay, city manager report.
Yes, just one clarification, Councilmember Lyons. The city was kind enough to give money to the Encinitas Friends of the Arts for the website development, but they actually developed the website, not the city. Thank you.
City attorney report.
No substantive report. I just want to remind council that my office, city manager's office and planning department is working diligently on the tax ordinance measure.
Okay, good. For our consideration on the 11th.
Correct.
Okay, good to hear. Thank you. City clerk report.
Just a reminder that we do have a vacancy on the Planning Commission, the Olivenhain representative, and applications are due May 5th. All applicants must be registered voters and reside in Olivenhain.
Okay, great. Thank you. Assistant city clerk report? No report. Okay. Yes. Yes.
I think that the questions about the funding and the bills, I would point out that there is a lot of money in for the bill for transit agencies, but most of that is for operational and equipment procurement and those sort of things, state of good repair, which there's always been a significant deficit. But there was one of the things that we were able to accomplish before I handed the reins over to Councilmember Hinsey is that there has been a policy change that NCTD is, can participate in some of the improvements that we're talking about. So I would encourage her and staff to work and try and identify some of those opportunities. I know it's a new policy and I'm sure that the purse strings are going to be pretty tight from NCTD, but in the end, some of the improvements that we're proposing are certainly beneficial to their operations. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a really great point because we haven't had projects that are jointly funded by NCTD and Encinitas at least since you and I have been in office.
right.
So I think, and that is an opportunity. Like when people talk about how there's a quiet zone in Cardiff, the reason for that was that Sandag was building the coastal rail trail and the city of Encinitas said if we put this small amount of money, I mean relatively small compared to the cost of the entire project, we could get a quiet zone at the same time it's under construction, and it was put in. So, if we were able to have a crossing type of project that we might be able well, I don't know if NCTD would fund a crossing project, but having a joint project of some type seems like it could be really good for both agencies.
Yes, and the reality is that they may not be paying for it, but there are ways that they can facilitate it and make it go much more smoothly, I think. So ultimately, this is one of those things that I don't think it's clearly defined, and I would love for us to be kind of the trailblazer and push a little bit harder and see what we can do to make some of these projects move along more quickly. I don't know if this city manager is ready to announce it yet, but I'm going to anyways. She has designated the assistant city manager, Jennifer Campbell, to work specifically on the rail corridor projects as part of an effort to kind of keep everything moving forward. So I look forward to that and
Great.
and the cooperative working relationship with the NCTD.
Okay, good. Perfect. All right, well,